Good morning, everybody. This is our third episode of Innovation Alley, the podcast where we bring in engaging guests to talk about innovative issues and other technological issues that are affecting our industry. I'm Tim O'Rourke, the Chief Technical Officer at Wade Trim. Today we're in sunny Cleveland, a place I called home for 19 years, and it's always great to get back here. I got some wonderful guests, and I also have a new co-host today, because Dave White, my usual co-host, is unavailable, so we've brought in our Chief Financial Officer, Ralph Picano.
Great to be here.
Who I'd like to introduce himself in a minute. Before I want to also introduce our two guests on the topic we're going to be covering today, which is cybersecurity. So obviously we bring in our IT, monsters,
Powerhouse.
right? Powerhouse. So we got Jason Sting, our IT Director, and we've got Brandon Pritz, our IT Security Manager, which is the critical element of what we're going to be talking about today. So look forward to having you guys here. So why don't we go around the table a little bit and have you guys talk a little bit about yourself, starting with the guy who writes our checks, our Chief Financial Officer, Ralph.
Thanks, Tim. Ralph Picano. I'm the CFO here at Wade Trim. Been with Wade Trim for 22 years or so now. In this role for, I believe, about 8 years. And I think in my role, I've had a very fortunate situation to be working with you guys. Had a front row seat to the development of our cyber security here. So I think I'm very fortunate to be here and looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. All right, why don't we start with you, Jason?
Great. Jason Sting. I'm the director of the IT team here at Wade Trim. I've been with the company for just under 3 years now. Stepped in just at the start of go home. There's a pandemic world here. A little bit about my background. I sort of grew up in IT in the tech world. So out in Southern California, I worked for a number of tech companies. And of the different IT verticals that I handle, IT security was one of them that was always very important and top of mind with those folks. So when I hired in here, I came to these gentlemen and said, guess what? We need to look into a program and get it set up. So I'm looking forward to talking about that today.
Absolutely. Okay, Brandon.
Yeah.
A little bit about yourself.
I'm Brandon Pritz. I've been here for about 2 years, actually, as of last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm the IT security manager. My background is in offensive security, so I used to do pen testing and security consulting. I've decided to come to the good side to be help defend now versus be the attacker.
Great. So, and we were having this conversation before the show that my career started, I keep saying this, my career started 40 years, that's like every show, but we weren't thinking in terms of anything to do with the internet or anything to do with laptop security. We didn't even have laptops. It was more about who could steal our intellectual property, paper copy, and all that stuff. So things have come a long way. And when I was interviewing along with the rest of the team to bring you on board at the IT position, Jason, I was thinking more that, wow, you could really help us in what we've been talking about in these previous shows and in the future with the IT component of innovation, programming, and software development, et cetera, et cetera. And you kept bringing up cybersecurity. So in your mind, before we get into the nuts and bolts of all of it, when do you think cybersecurity became a big thing? And we were talking about we weren't even investing anything in it 10 years ago, but when do you think it has become and why it has become the big thing that every firm of our type and even the owners that we serve should be worrying about this on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis?
Right. I mean, I think I could trace it back to the amount of spend. So I remember IT budgets having very low IT security spend. We would maybe do an antivirus or something to stop, those malicious things that would pop up and things like that, pop-up blockers and such 10 years ago. But year over year, and these, no one hold me to this, but what I've noticed in my career is that year over year, it became more of a focus, it became a department, it became a way of life of just doing business in America nowadays, or basically anywhere in the world.
But that doesn't happen organically. It usually happens, right, because the threat is increasing astronomically.
Exactly.
From where it was. So when do you see that these folks that are the head of ransomware, all these other cybersecurity risk, intellectual property thefts, and everything else, when did they see this fertile ground of, hey, we can get some of this stuff the easy way?
Yeah, and that's the key, the easy way, right? So the hard way is to try to surpass or circumvent all of the firewalls and other infrastructure that we put in place to protect it.
Right.
You got to be really smart and really devious and exploit a lot of patches to get in through that stuff. That's the harder way. The easy way is to trick someone that already works there.
Exactly.
And I think that started happening when people realized, for example, that you could send out an email to invite people to get gift cards. And they would do it because if they thought it was coming from the right person, they felt like it was a direct order. And, someone would make a couple $100. Once that evolved into what we have today, we can get into that more
Now
and
it can
more.
become millions. Yeah.
It is now millions,
Yeah.
and it involves the FBI, and there's insurance, and all sorts of components to cybersecurity that hopefully we'll be able to get into that allow a company to not only protect itself, but also bounce back from an issue if they have one.
Well, you guys have convinced me of the fear of it all, right? And I joke all the time because people say I used to not read my emails.
Mm-hmm.
That really wasn't true. But now I don't open up attachments on my emails if I don't know it's coming from somebody that if I don't know it's coming.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being Well, let's ask Brandon. Am I being paranoid or am I being prudent?
I'd say more on the prudent side, right? Because if you're not expecting something, and
Is there a little bit of paranoia in it? Or
absolutely there has to be, right? more of vigilance, right?
Right.
But I mean, a lot of times attackers will, even from like a trusted third party, right? So we deal with third party vendors, and one of them could get compromised and send you in, say, a fake invoice, and you normally do business with that individual, but that fake invoice is malicious because they've been compromised on the other side. The easy way not the easy way, but one of the ways to determine it is exactly what you said, is did you expect for that email to show up, and were you currently doing work with them?
And so, Brandon, I've been told because I've got an officer position, as does this gentleman, that I'm a target.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the average person working in an organization. The reason we love the fact that you're on board with us is because you've got a history of understanding hackers and how they think and how they would go about what they do. So why, in your mind, am I a target or an average person? How do they target people within an organization
Yeah, and
to breach the trust of, hey, open this thing up?
yeah, and obviously executives are always big targets. It's called whaling in the social engineering
Why is it called
world.
whaling?
Because phishing in general is sending in the phishing emails.
So it's the big
And
the
they
big game.
consider it whaling. Then there's spear phishing, and there's a bunch of other words and stuff. But obviously, officers have the keys to the kingdom, right? You guys have more access to things, and
So we have more access within the network that they want to then infiltrate.
absolutely.
Whereas
right.
an average new employee may not. Right?
But I don't want to, stress that executives are the main targets, because it only takes one. It can be anybody, right?
Right.
It could be myself. It could be an IT individual. It could be somebody in finance, HR, an office admin assistant. It doesn't matter who it is. If they get access, they have access, and they can elevate privileges in many ways as well.
So everyone has part of the defense system, not just a department or.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everybody's a target.
So can you elaborate on, a lower individual in the organization getting targeted? How does that impact the company?
Yeah, so I mean, if they get access to, say, a lower individual's email, they still have a trust relationship built with, Ralph, Tim, yourself. They can send you emails and ask for direct deposit changes, ask for gift cards if it's the case of our CEO, as well as, just getting access onto the network is usually the initial goal. And they, like I said, they can elevate in many different ways, right? So just having presence on the network is really the initial goal. Then after that, you can elevate permissions by exploiting patches that aren't there or sending in other phishing emails. There's tons of techniques.
So there's a period where they've gotten in and they don't maybe necessarily strike immediately. They're building a network.
Well, they're doing recon for
They're
sure.
doing recon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about why are you guys targets as well, I mean, you may or may not have permissions within the network, but you're definitely the known faces of the organization. And what they know by that is that if I can fake Ralph Picano or Tim O'Rourke, I can probably tell people to do things.
You can get other people to open things up.
Right.
So
I have more juice, as we like to call it in IT.
That makes-
So
it's obvious, yeah.
that's why you rank higher. That doesn't mean that your breach is any more or less important than anybody else in the organization.
Yeah.
And the bad guys are getting more sophisticated, right? They're,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
getting to know what our cadence is with our emails, and how we compose those emails, and then composing emails like that to make it look like
Like us. Yes.
And there's
Yes.
so many avenues for this, but let's back up a little bit. I went to this technical leadership conference last summer, and we heard horror stories from 3 of our industry peers. I'm not going to mention the names for obvious reasons, but it was more of them giving us their experiences as a warning sign on why this is so important.
A story I
And
hope to never tell.
Well, I hope we never tell the story, quite frankly, and I feel for those that had to. But in all 3 of those cases, it was a simple example of what you just described, Brian. The wrong email was opened up by the right person and an attachment, and then they got in and were able to shut the entire network down with ransomware. And what I was shocked about it was not just that it had happened, is there is recon going on with these bad actors on what the company's resources are and what they could afford. So they were asking the maximum number that wouldn't put the organization necessarily out of business and they could afford. And it was not in the tens of thousands. It was not in the hundreds of thousands. It's in the millions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a crippling blow on many fronts, because not only does it hit you financially up front, then there's the whole secondary damage of what does that do to you in the industry, as far as, let's face it, if you've been breached this way, or if that's the right term, hacked or whatever, that, I want to use the term stink, but there's a stink to it in the sense that, okay, obviously you weren't watching the store. You're
Right.
not watching our data.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't trust you with our data, and this is our consultant partners as well as our people that pay our checks, our clients. That's the biggest. Well, obviously, the first is a horrifying thought, but the second part is the long-term damage it could do.
Yeah.
And so it really is a vigilance of every day, every minute, you're at risk if the wrong person opens up the wrong email at the wrong time.
I think it's a
And-
perfect time,
yeah.
if you wouldn't mind, for us to step through that sort of fallout, right?
Yeah, so let's, well, or do we need to back up a little bit and say, let's look at the 3 or 4 sources of infiltration and breaches.
Absolutely.
And kind of, because we're throwing terms around like fish and spearfishing, like
Right,
everybody
right.
knows what it is. Why don't we spend a little bit of time kind of just backing up a little bit and say, let's go through
Yeah.
these sources and how they happen and what you think the best measure of protection is. And then we'll deal with the overarching
What that means.
means
If you
at
get.
the end. Yeah, so who wants to take that? I mean, it ain't going to be this guy.
Right, right.
So who wants to handle that part of it?
You start.
If I may
Yeah.
kick it off with a question, Brandon, in your experience, what's the biggest cyber threat to any organization?
You would think it would be something technical, but it's not. And I don't mean it in a bad way. It's unfortunately the users, right? You can have a multi-million-dollar security system, but at the end of the day, if a user types their password in to a site that they're not supposed to, if they have, if an attacker decides to in some way leverage their multi-factor authentication and take over their account, that all the security controls and all the money you spent is kind of a moot point.
How does the user know this has happened, or do they?
Well, they don't, unfortunately.
See, that's the scary part, is you could have already been breached and don't know it.
Yeah, and generally speaking, once you've entered your credentials into something like a malicious site, you're going to know at that point in time that something isn't quite looking right, whether it takes you to download a document that just doesn't look right, or nothing happens after you log in.
That's the other thing I never do, Brandon. I never give anyone any information about anything.
Well, you shouldn't.
You want to know what my name is? Look it up. I'm not even going to give you my name.
Can you give me your mother's maiden name, and credit card number, and everything?
My mother's
too?
maiden name. I mean, that stuff's all fair game for password, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the other piece of that is what you're talking about is the users. You kind of jumped ahead and said you'll kind of know something is up. But let's just take it to the biggest extreme of that. If you don't know what's up, like if you don't understand or remember if you had entered your credentials or something like that, what do we do?
And it can happen quickly, right? You can type in your credentials, and they could be on the network within a matter of 5
You're
minutes.
describing
right?
a fish or a spearfishing
Yeah.
attack where somebody
Right.
is
Yeah.
bought in, the trust is gained, and now I'm starting to get personal information to something or somebody
Yeah,
Right.
that I shouldn't be doing this to.
correct. Yeah.
And so the protective measure with my rule is if I don't know what's coming and I don't participate at all.
Well, yeah.
But
Well, you
there
should
are times,
report it too, though.
Right, there are
Yeah.
times when you actually do have to do business over the web just to get by in your daily life. So for the average person, you know, okay, I'm going to deal with my financial advisor or my bank or something. And something comes in and asks me for something. How do I know or not know that?
Well, I mean, first off, your bank will never ask you for that kind
Well, there
of
you go.
information,
See?
right?
So I'm
And-
right.
Yeah.
They're never going to ask me.
And one of the messages we pass along too when we do a lot of user training and user education is even within IT, we will never ask you for your password. We will never ask you for that important information. Nobody in the real world should either.
They're getting more sophisticated in the sense you're starting to fake emails for not only executives within your own organization, but probably outside your organization,
Yeah.
which appears to be a legitimate professional affiliation. I just get back to you've got me so afraid, Brandon. I'm sitting in if I don't see or know this is coming, I don't touch it unless. I actually did get an email from this guy a couple years ago. Remember? I think I called you. Probably don't remember because.
The only email you read?
Yes. Yeah. Well, mostly what he does, I just call him. But I called him up and said, "Did you send me an email?" He said, "No, I didn't."
Yeah, yeah.
And that for me was it. It's like, okay,
I'm a target.
I'm a target.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody is.
And everybody should kind of think that way, right?
But I think a key piece that we want to say is you choose to ignore it, which is fine. That's the
it's
second
hurting my
best.
production, though, Jason. I mean,
But if you could report
We
it
like the
to your
cybersecurity
IT team,
department.
yeah.
then they become more aware of the threats that are hitting. Because we don't read through
So
your
the
emails.
important thing is to say when that happens, make sure Brandon knows
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the user's embarrassed and doesn't want to tell you guys,
Right.
do you guys know about it?
So-
Do you tell if somebody's in?
Generally speaking, yeah, we know. And those are always those hard conversations to have, right? You have to call a user up and say, hey, we got an alert that some kind of, because we have technical controls in place, right? And we can figure out if certain malicious.
So you can tell if a guest is at the party that wasn't invited. You can tell.
Hopefully, right?
Okay.
But we have certain technical controls in place that will, like, if, for example, if a known malicious URL is activated or a request is sent out to it, we'll get an alert about that, right? And we'll go and dig into that alert with the tools that we have, and we'll find out, okay, 14 users received this URL in an email, and 3 of them clicked it, and we have to reach out to them and ask them what happened and try to get the whole story so we can write up an incident report. We can figure out what's going on, and then in the background, we have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure nothing malicious or benign is on that user's sessions or accounts, right? So generally, we'll have them reset their password, we clear all sessions, make them log out of everything, and we essentially start the account from nothing as if they're a brand new account because we need to make sure that no attacker is left over sitting on there doing recon or getting ready to make a next move, right?
And maybe it was you that told me that. And once they know that they're there, then it can accelerate and they can try to do the damage before you can patch it up.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that true too? So you don't want them to know that they're in there? Is that a understand?
So yes, during some sort of discovery, when one suspects that they've been compromised, the recommended course of action is to take communications outside of that network, because if they are there listening, they're going to wait to see when I'm telling Ralph, hey, by the way, freeze our accounts or whatever, because then they know how to accelerate their action. So the idea is remove us from there. But that's way into a remediation phase. Until you can confirm or at least have suspicion that there is someone listening, I always want to hearken back to it's best to let IT know ahead of time, however embarrassing it may feel, because nobody wants to be user zero in this case. Nobody wants it. We have a lot of technical controls in place. Brandon likes to deliver the message of, we could probably keep up if something happened nowadays, Wade Trim, the way we stand.
Well, just think of the stigma of being a person.
Right. I do, and I'm very empathetic to that. But we've made it super easy to just give us a heads up because we need to know. If anybody needs to know,
Yeah, I don't know
we
how
need
much
to
we
know.
want to share. We did about a year ago, maybe it was a little more than that, actually go through a similar type thing where we went into, we might have an issue, and we got to communicate to everybody how we're going to react to it. In that case, it wasn't anything that we worried it to be, but there's that need to get the communications out.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Because people still are trying to get proposals turned in, tech memos written, you know, all of that. To me, that's a critical aspect of this too, is how do you get a protocol in place where, you know, it's like the alarm that goes off and says, okay, we need to get everyone out of the building right now, but you don't want the fire to know that everyone's leaving the building. Right. So, if that was a bad analogy, but you know where I'm going.
No.
So, what's your thoughts? Because we went through that and we learned some things there. Maybe we don't even want to tell in the podcast what.
No, I mean, I think that was the perfect impetus by which we built more quickly a stronger IT security posture, cybersecurity posture.
Yes.
We already had Brandon in place, so we had some level of expertise in-house on how to detect and isolate if we could. However, the incident that you're talking about, we didn't have the tools that we have nowadays to really pinpoint. Absolutely. So what we had to do was we had to take the most extreme measure, which was shut everything down. And I get it. People were upset that they were missing deadlines and that potentially, you know, they didn't have anything to do but twiddle their thumbs.
Money too, technically, right?
And we're losing money.
Yeah.
But the converse side of that, or the flip side of that, would have been a lot worse. And we'll get into that later on.
We're not going to lose as much as a ransomware thing would be. But so that's internal protocols, and we can build on that today. But there's also cases, and I think we've been through this a couple times, where because we work with a lot of vendors, we work with a lot of consultants, we service hundreds and hundreds of owners. And they're all targets too.
Yes.
And so if they do get victimized or compromised, whatever term we want to use, what's our protocols for dealing with a sub or a prime consultant that just went through this? You know, that stink I was talking about. I start to feel like, should we be sending these guys anything? Or, you know, what's the opening anything? I mean, that I think is the bigger thing, and that's what I heard at that conference was they didn't want to send anything.
Yeah.
It's, I'm not opening anything you send me.
We've had
And
instances
that's
with
crazy,
that.
right? So
We had a municipality that we worked with that actually had a bunch of their email had gotten taken over. And we had found out from, you know, essentially they tried to phish us through their compromised accounts, right? And we had to send out a company-wide notification letting everybody know to, you know, seize communications with, you know,
Brandon,
this
how do you
entity.
communicate that delicate issue with the client, because you know they're writing the checks, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
without saying you know you guys are sloppy and we don't want to interact with you.
well, in so many words, that's what you have to
But
say.
that's
though,
kind
right?
but you got to say it in a
Yeah.
Right? So how do you guys navigate that? Because to me that's sensitive.
And, you know, that's part of the reason why we're doing this as well, is to try to, you know, spread the word of cybersecurity. So if they have another cybersecurity department or their company is very familiar with that, it's a very straightforward conversation, and it's generally a little bit easier to have, right? Because they're used to it. They have a security manager themselves, or
Right.
somebody there that
Right.
knows the lingo and, you know, put their head down and say, yeah, it happened to us, but we understand where we're at right now, right? The difficulty comes in is when they don't have a cybersecurity department, right? When they just have, say, a director of IT, and I have to now communicate with the director of IT saying, you know, this is what happened, and unfortunately, we can't continue to do communications with you right now, right?
Are they receptive? In this case, were they receptive to that message?
This one, yeah. Very, very much so,
Yeah.
because they knew they had an issue on their
Right.
side.
And they're stressed out about it too,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
absolutely.
so I think they would look at that as, thank you for bringing this up. We understand the criticality of it. It means that we know that you're thinking along these lines too.
Yeah.
So I think that's positive.
And it's the same approach we take with the users, right? We're not there to yell at them. We're not there to get them in trouble. We want to figure out what happened at the end of the day to make sure everybody's data is safe, right?
Right.
Like when you said if a user accidentally types their credentials in, you know, same with a client. We don't want to shame them publicly. We don't want to go tell on their boss or anything. We just want, you know, we want them to be comfortable so they can come to IT and say, hey, I accidentally clicked this link in this email. Hey, I accidentally downloaded this and something funky happened to my computer. Well, I don't want people to be
They give you that
vendors as
phone
well.
call after they've thrown up 3 times.
Yeah,
I
I don't want them to be
Yeah.
afraid to communicate
Right,
with us, right?
Of course.
So
Can
and
I
that,
ask a quick question?
Sure, go
So
ahead.
for those smaller entities that might not have an IT department,
Yep,
can security be outsourced?
absolutely. Yeah.
effectively?
Yeah. And I mean, we outsource part of ours as well because I'm not going to stay up 24/7 and look at everything, right? We have a managed service
I
provider.
thought you were. I thought you never slept. I mean,
Yeah,
Why
the
would
this
I hire
happens
you?
at 2 in the
does it,
morning,
right?
I call you, I figure you're going to pick up the phone. But
No, it's I might, but we have a managed service provider that they weekends, holidays, nighttime they watch that kind of stuff for us. And if you're a smaller company, you can outsource some kind of consultancy and bring somebody in temporarily to kind of get your policies and procedures in place. But what really comes down to is the operations side of things. You do need some entity, whether it be internal or external,
Right.
watching your systems 24/7. It just, it's a requirement in my mind.
so one of the points I want to make today, not just in Cleveland because the sun's out and it's about to turn winter. And
I wanna
this
be
is
back
the
in
last sunny day.
Florida.
But I love Cleveland. You're from Florida. The reason we're in Cleveland today is because you guys are on a road show doing training.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you
For the
put
whole
a
company.
nice logo to it with CyberCon, and the graphic of the notice is a little scary because it's a scary topic and it's Halloween and all that stuff. But I
guy
look
with the
at I look at training for these type because the other cultural thing that we're doing beyond cybersecurity is safety, right? And I think to myself on my day-to-day, we get annual training for safety, we get annual training for cybersecurity. That when I think of the safety training, some of it's just common sense, but I mean, like something like confined space entry to go into
Yeah.
a chamber. Yeah, I'll have to pull out the protocols again and the training that I got the day or two before I go in and do this thing that I might do once every 3 or 4 months or my age. If I'm the average engineer. But cybersecurity is literally a day-to-day, minute-by-minute, hour-by-hour awareness. And I'll be honest, the training is, you ask, why do you do annual training? Why are you doing CyberCon? Because the reality is, once you're trained, you've got the immediate awareness of all that, but it kind of, over time, you start forgetting.
Yep.
What was that fish thing I heard 3 or 4 or 5 months ago?
Yeah.
This constant, get it out and
It's always changing too, right?
and then you.
Absolutely.
So why don't you guys talk a little bit about your theory on awareness and training and what's become so instrumental
Sure.
in your defense mechanisms for this on a day-to-day basis. And I'm looking forward to seeing your CyberCon here
awesome.
at lunch. Not just because I get a free sandwich out of it.
Right.
That's how we get everybody to show
That's
up.
how you get people to show up. But if
We
it's
got-
a sandwich that keeps ransomware from happening,
Yeah.
let's order 2.
We
right?
got
So,
lots of cool swag too,
yeah,
if you're interested.
Yeah. So what? I don't know who wants to take that.
You
on,
want to
but-
start? And
I'll start it. Yeah, so CyberCon came up between Brandon and I when we were brainstorming on how do we keep this environment safe. As we've already established in this chat, the weakest link sometimes could be the user. So as you're alluding to,
Well, you said almost always. Right?
almost always, yeah.
It's in the 90%.
I try to be a little more
Oh,
kind,
you can
but,
say it.
but
It's
yeah, I
you.
need to say it.
Because this happened, it ain't my fault. It's the guy who opened up the email.
He doesn't read it. So.
I make people text me, but then that's not even safe anymore. So basically what came of it was, hey, I want to introduce Brandon to the company as where we're taking this place. However, we're in a lockdown, there's no travel.
Right.
So what we're going to do is what many organizations do is we're going to require these hour-long cybersecurity trainings, and you got to watch them, and then we're going to tap on your shoulder if you don't. It's a required watching. And I guess I always thought that it's a solid approach because it keeps you up to date on what's going on currently because they're constantly making new ones. However, it's not very personable. It doesn't allow you a lot of interactivity.
The human interaction of learning, yeah.
And it doesn't really apply necessarily to Wade Trim. So the fortunate thing of us being delayed by COVID was that we were able to put together a stronger program before introducing
I
Brandon.
think it worked in our favor.
I think so too. I think it got us definitely a couple years worth of stats of things that have happened here. So we offer up a lot of useful data, but it also gives us sort of a fun environment to
Oh, yeah, it's great.
to teach.
So what are the topics you're going to hit this afternoon?
Oh, everything. I mean,
Well, let's-
first of all,
a
I'd
few.
love to talk about the fun piece because we
Let's
thought
do
we
that. Let's
figured
start
that
off
learning should
Gamified
be
it,
fun.
right?
We gamified
You
a
guys
lot
are always
of it.
stressed
yeah.
out. You need to have a little more fun. Right?
I think so too, yeah. And so we actually, our default went to college drinking games.
Really?
So we got
We're doing a college drinking game. I know.
pretty much.
No drinks during work hours.
Yeah, the cups sometimes tip over because
Were
they
you
don't have
drunk on
anything in the
lemonade
base.
or something?
Exactly.
All right.
Get a sugar high going.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
fun of all of that is sort of a trivia, interactive thing that inevitably either provokes questions during our talk or always after our talk. People feel now more of a one-on-one connection with us. They line up to talk to either Brandon or myself about whatever their personal data hygiene questions or issues are. That's where it lives. If you practice good data hygiene at home because you're learning about it, you're going to most likely continue those practices at work as well.
So that's one of your themes. If they have 3 takeaways, what I practice at home, diligence there will play. It's the old sports edge. You play how you practice.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
So what are the couple other themes you want to get out of this?
Well, out of today's talk,
CyberCon,
I'd like you to
CyberCon.
talk about your perspective of CyberCon.
Yeah, so I mean, it started, in my ideas toward it started with, usually we watch like a 45-minute video or a
Right,
20-minute video.
exactly.
And let's be honest, people don't pay attention to that for the whole time. I myself even don't, right? You'll put it up on your
Ralph was
monitor.
glued to every minute of that thing.
Yeah, I'm
watch,
sure, right?
Watch it twice.
He took notes.
So,
Yeah.
usually somebody has it up on their other monitor while they're doing other
While they're
work, too.
working on
Yeah,
a tech
and
memo,
we're-
and
yeah.
I click and say, yeah, I can get it by Jason because I finished
Exactly.
the training,
Right.
and then you really didn't watch it.
Yeah, and then you're gonna get nasty grams from me saying complete your training just so we can fill this checkbox
Exactly.
box compliance, saying my users were trained this year. Well, that's cool on paper, but did it actually work, right?
So you're kind of replacing that watch a video with in-person.
That's exactly what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? And it's been shown that humans in general pay attention more when the stuff is gamified, right?
Especially if it's free food and
Well,
drinking.
exactly, and we give out prizes too. But the whole thing to drive it home is exactly what he said. Like, listen, this isn't about securing Wade Trim. This isn't about. I mean, it is at the end of the day, right?
Right.
But if we teach them to have that good personal hygiene at home in their personal lives, like teach them update your devices, look out for these flags, do these certain things, then, like you said, it translates to at work.
My wife does all our finances. Can you spend 25 minutes with her before you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's part of it too. Is you take it home and take it to your.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we
Significant other
do,
I
right?
shouldn't have said that. Cut that out because now she's a fish target.
Now she's going to be
Cut that out.
Tim O'Rourke's wife.
And the biggest takeaway that I like to drive home
I'm
is
kidding. I'm
kinda-
not even married.
is that fact of cybersecurity is usually within a company we're not the desired or liked department, right? We're the people that are there and
Considered Big Brother.
we
Do you guys feel that way, honestly?
that's the stigma we're trying to change with this.
See, I look at
CyberCon,
you
right?
as the thing keeping the lights on.
Well, thank you for that, and everybody
Yeah.
doesn't,
How about, how many times have I called you and said, I got something?
Yep.
A couple times,
Yeah,
haven't I?
absolutely, and we got that fish
Am I
alert
being
button.
paranoid, Brandon? Am I being, you
No,
always
not
say,
in the slightest.
Well, yeah, a little bit, but yeah.
But it's the stigma that the cybersecurity department is just there to hand down regulations and be this draconian department is what the stigma we're trying to change, right?
Yeah, I
don't
don't
want
see that at all. But
we're the people that make you make long passwords. We make you put MFA on your accounts or multi-factor authentication, and we spy on your stuff.
But to your
we really
point, though,
don't.
you should be doing that in your own personal usage.
Exactly,
Right?
and that's how we try to drive that message home of these things are okay and we're here to help you, right?
I mean, Ralph's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passwords that he uses, that's probably not, he's got to get out of that.
It's just password.
I love numbers.
Password 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and we do that during CyberCon too. We crack some passwords live at Wade Trim, and we show people. We do live demos during the thing. We try to show some examples of what an attacker would do, and thankfully, from my offensive background, we're able to do that, right?
So what I'm
we
hearing
can
you say,
drive that
Brandon, the
message
main
home.
thing you guys are accomplishing with this is the annual, which probably needs to even be more frequent in awareness, but because it evolves constantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is being replaced with something you got to do on our intranet with human interaction and making it fun.
Yeah.
And getting it better training out.
Cybersecurity is not just an annual thing; it's an entire culture that you want engraved within your company. You want it to be kind of like safety is for us now, right? We have safety moments before all of our stuff, and cybersecurity
Maybe
is.
the industry is going to evolve and here's a cybersecurity moment.
Well, it is actually. Our training manager took some of the slides from our CyberCon, and she's implementing that as some safety moments that we can do as well. Because
Because it is safety in a different kind
right.
of way.
Yeah, it's
right?
digital
It's a
safety.
great idea.
Right?
It's digital safety,
Yeah.
yeah. And look, I mean, falling down and breaking an ankle is bad.
Yeah.
But if somebody breaches your personal accounts and takes everything you own, that's a little worse than a sprained ankle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
So
we
it's
we don't
more
wanna
than
cause
just
anybody-
personal safety, it's your overall health. Right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying, you know, our data is more important than physical harm, but
I kind of just did. But how about in our clients as well? And how, is there national type of training resources or any other sources that people that may not have access to a CyberCon inside their organization should go to?
yeah. So like we have a we purchase software as well called KnowBe4, which
KnowBe4?
Yeah, which is
That's
yeah. It's a Kevin Mitnick, the original hacker that was, you know, kind of started the whole thing. He's the guy behind the company, and it's a great company. We use some of their products, but not a plug in any way, I swear. But you know, they give out annual security training. That's the videos that we used to send out, and they have these 15-minute additional ones and so forth. But it just wasn't driving home that message as much as getting in front of the people and customizing it to Wade Trim, like Jason said, right?
Right.
And you know, we want people to understand why we're here, not just, hey, here's that other video to watch.
I think
or
that's an
something.
easy sell.
Let me give another additional thing to that. So that's the nuts and the bolts of the program. The biggest thing that any organization that doesn't have anything going on currently is get executive support.
Yep.
Get
Oh my
executive
gosh, yeah.
buy-in and make this the company message, not the IT security message.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because if we don't have that, if any of these IT directors that don't have a security team don't have that, they'll come up
You know,
with the best ideas possible.
And remember that leadership conference I was talking about? That was the big takeaway, of how aware the executive team became post-tragedy.
Well,
yeah.
And it wasn't that it, and I don't want to pick, it wasn't that it didn't matter, but it was, oh my God, it just happened to us, right? And it could happen to any of us. So I think you got the executive support obviously here.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, this is the guy who writes the checks. So
Yeah.
we said we're spending zero on this front 10 years ago.
Right.
Ralph, I don't know if you want to give a number, but what percent of increase over time and what kind of
What's a percent of zero?
percent?
But
Well,
I'll say, you know, what, 600,000, you know, depending on how you categorize certain things, probably about 600 grand a year is spent on cyber related, including labor, cyber related.
and it's like insurance. In my mind, it's well worth every penny.
Including labor, and again, this executive support that I'm talking about is all of you not only encouraging CyberCon, but supporting it through, you know, our town halls and things like that, and participating, going yourselves. That just solidifies the message even more.
Yeah.
So
I'm going twice. I'm going to go again today.
All
So
right.
he enjoyed it so much. He wants more swag. I have a great
Get a
kind
new
of.
pad.
he's going to do
gonna
better
have
on
actual
he's going to do
training.
better on
Yeah.
quarter bounce.
We'll see what's in his lemonade this
I
year.
got a kind of awesome story that, you know, it showed me how much I enjoyed running the cybersecurity department here at Wade Trim. So, you know, I used to do consulting before in pen testing, right? Password length was one of the #1 things that would usually pop up in an executive deliverable, right? And I'd, you know, talk to the executive team and say, you need to increase your password policy. Over 200 companies, right? And generally, they would, you know, grind their teeth and say no at that. We can't do this to our users, right? They're gonna kind of come up with the pitchforks. They're not gonna be happy that we make them make these long passwords. We call them passphrases now, though, right?
Just because you wanted to change a short password to a longer
Yeah.
one.
So, you know, and I got here and Wade Trim had 8-character minimum password policy, right? Your password could be 8 characters, which is easily guessable, so easy to figure out. And that was one of the first things I did when I was here, is we need to increase this, right? And I was at fear that I was going to run into those same hurdles that I've ran into dealing with, you know, executive teams at other companies, at other firms. I went to Andy, our CEO, and, you know, he approved, obviously, the policy change aspect of it. And I went up to him and I said, hey, you know, thank you for allowing me to do that. I can't tell you how many places I've been where that's difficult. And he said, Brandon, he goes, if I knew to make those calls, I wouldn't have needed to hire you. So it was awesome to hear.
Yeah, that's true about Andy's. Yeah,
to
I
get
know
that
that
support,
for a fact that
right?
he's terrified of this.
Yeah.
I'm on the risk management committee along with him for the board of directors, and we talk about this topic at every meeting.
Yeah, and
it is front and center. It is, you know. So I'm gonna look, we're kind of winding down on time. I want to get a feel for you guys. You were losing sleep constantly about this topic 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And you obviously were brought on to be our white knight in helping us, defend ourselves against this. How do you feel today versus 2 years ago, and how do you think we're going into the future? Are you feeling more and more? Are you?
From an immediate risk perspective, I sleep a lot better. I sleep better because we have put in tools such as an XDR. We have put in...
Wait, XDR.
Yeah, well, I'm doing this so that they can put up the little graphic and define it for all of us. But essentially, it's an organization that watches our environment 24/7, and you approved it.
That makes you feel better.
It makes me feel better, clearly from a risk perspective, sorry. It makes me feel better. But the exciting thing is that cybersecurity, that vertical within my IT department, is never going to stop growing, stop becoming more complex and more diverse, and it also transcends all the other verticals. So Brandon has to watch out what we're doing in infrastructure, what we're doing in DevOps, and what we're doing in service desk, and what all of you are doing. So he touches everywhere. We need to be coding better. We need to put our policies in place. We need to get NIST compliance. There's a ton of things that we're always going to do to constantly improve. But yeah, 2 years ago, I thought if we get touched, we don't have anything to protect ourselves.
We've all been to the doctor and said, what's your pain scale 1 to 10? And you 2 years ago were a 9. Where's your pain scale today?
My pain scale for an immediate breach is down to a 2.
Well, that's
we had something happen, what was it, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Yes.
We had a little bit of a scare. And
we were able to isolate it.
Yeah, somebody had a pop-up which was masquerading as a virus on a computer. They had just clicked on the wrong link, and their Chrome browser made it look like ransomware had taken over their computer. And I think we had responded and had the computer isolated, had the new user a new computer within a matter of minutes. It didn't, it was almost instantaneous, right? And that was a proud moment, I know, for him and I, totally.
That wasn't Ralph on a gambling site.
No.
But
we gave each other a virtual high five because it was after hours as well, which made it just that much more impressive.
So your
I was
pain
sitting at dinner.
scale is like Jason's? Are you guys on
No,
the same
mine's
page?
a little higher.
Because that's your
Yeah.
that's your wired to be.
Yeah,
I mean, if we thought you were at a 2, we'd be nervous right now.
Yeah, you should be, right? But that's also why we get annual pen tests done as well, and that's something I recommend all companies get done, right? Because you have a view of your network and your infrastructure and everything that's going on, but you get tunnel vision sometimes, right? And you need that third party.
Complacency.
Exactly, right? And although I think we're secure and I think we did it the right way, I still need somebody to check my work as well, right? And that's why we bring in pen testers to say, okay, let's have an annual test done to see what can happen and how quickly could they take over our network, right? And you talked about how quickly it can happen. I think my record when I was doing it was 23 minutes. Went from 0 to complete domain admin, having control and keys to the kingdom, right?
Well, let's talk executive support. So Brandon, on this list of people we can least afford to lose, you're right at the top.
I hope so.
So ahead of this guy. No, I'm kidding.
That brings my risk level down to
So that all being, so this was a great topic. You guys are great guests, and I know you got to get ready for the CyberCon here. That's exciting training for the Cleveland group, which is really excited to see this. So
We've gotten good reviews about it too.
Cleveland.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Users seem to like it.
Yeah, we're gonna hit all the major offices, and then we're gonna do a virtual one, which sadly won't include the games.
No, I think the interaction ones are going to be the best.
Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not everybody's been able to attend.
We have some remote employees and.
I would really love for anybody that's in my position that walks into an environment that wants to start a cyber security program to know this. Know that at the very least, you should be turning on MFA in your environment and educating your users. At the very least, we can talk about hard drive encryptions and all the other tools that one could do, but many folks that perhaps don't have the experience working in cybersecurity but are running an IT department might feel like it's overwhelming. Take little steps, start with those little steps, and constantly keep your executive leadership in the loop of what you're doing and garnish their support. Once you do, it will snowball. It will grow, and your program will flourish.
Well, ultimately, I think it was you or you. I don't remember who said it, and I think we can end with this, is that ultimately it becomes cultural.
Yeah.
Right.
That everyone thinks about it every day. And I think we've gotten there in a lot of our programs, safety for sure, but I think we're getting closer here to where we want to be.
Yep.
and it's because of you two guys. So,
I do want to add one more thing to what you said, right? So the user education and protecting accounts is immensely important. The second most important thing is ensuring your systems are updated. That's, the
Patching, yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
that's just, if you're going to do those bare minimums, protect accounts and update your systems. Those are the two.
patching.
Yeah, absolutely.
And teach your people.
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be the last word. 'Cause, you guys got to get ready. But this was a great topic. You guys did a wonderful job.
Nice job,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing your CyberCon, and stay tuned next month. We got another great topic coming to be announced in the near future.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you
great day,
much.
folks.
Appreciate it.